Nobody knows what he is. He is clearly some kind of intelligence-aligned operative. He is clearly involved deeply with his best friend, Peter Thiel, with J.D. Vance, another good friend of his, with Joe Kent, a CIA officer. He is in bed with people in the intelligence community and people in this government and exerts influence on it.
So Nick Fuentes just dropped a nuclear expose on Tucker Carlson's intelligence connections, and it's absolutely devastating. He's connecting dots between Thiel's Palantir CIA contracts, Joe Kent's agency background, and Tucker's establishment ties that nobody else will touch. This isn't conspiracy theory. These are documented relationships the regime once buried. Let's break this down.
And that is why there is so much consternation among the pro-Israel crowd about his rise and about his apparent shift and what he talks about and how he talks about it, specifically as it pertains to Israel. And so what he says in this interview, it's of importance. It really matters because this is the discourse, this is the conversation inside the American right wing, and this is going to determine the future of where the party goes after Trump leaves office. J.D. Vance is the vice president, heir apparent. There's going to be an attempt to consolidate support around him, and that's going to be an awful lot of power to dictate the future of the GOP in the wake of the sunsetting of Trump's political career. It's a big deal. And Tucker is a spokesman for this. He's a prophet for this. And so it matters what he's thinking and saying. So anyway, that's just a little bit on the significance of it. I want to get into the interview. And in the first place, I want to talk a little bit about what he said about me, because he did address me directly. And it's sort of funny. There were a few major topics in the interview. They talk about the war in Iran, the Trump administration, J.D. Vance. They talk about what's happening in the country. But a significant chunk of the interview was really all about me and my interview with Tucker back in October of 2025. What's interesting is that Tucker did not want to talk about that at all. Didn't want to talk about me. He almost seemed insulted that he had to. Interviewer kept bringing me up, asking him about me, and he seemed not happy about that. So we're going to work through this. We'll start with what was said about me in my interview. And like I said, this is not completely self-indulgent. We're going to tie it all together at the end. This is very significant. This is a dialectical situation. Okay, this is the dialectic in the populist, nationalist, post-Trump GOP. It really matters a lot. So we'll start with some of his comments about me. I did clip them, so they're just a little bit shorter here. And we're just going to read through it, and then I'll discuss it. So the interviewer says, how do you see Fuentes in terms of the future of the right? Now, pay close attention. This is Tucker's answer. What does he think about the Groyper movement, me, the future of the right wing? This is a quote. He says, most of the debate about race, ethnicity, religion, and to some extent immigration are less resonant long-term than debates about economics. I think the main frustration among young people is not just that the composition of the country is changing too fast, but the main concerns are about the lack of economic opportunity for young people. Older people do not acknowledge that. And so I think most future conversations politically will be about economics. It's a really interesting statement, isn't it? Because obviously my show, if I were to say what the big issues of my show are, I would lay them out very clearly. I would say, one, it is the transition of America from a white nation to a non-white nation. This is called the fourth demographic transition, fourth or fifth demographic transition. It's global. And that is that because of communication, transportation technology, because of collapse of birth rates in the first world, rise of birth rates in the third world, you have a massive migration of non-white people, poor, peasant, illiterate, non-white people from the global south to the global north. And we're talking about Hispanics and Asians moving north into the United States. We're talking about Africans and Middle Easterners moving north across the Mediterranean into Europe. So I would say that's one of my big issues, and it is an issue of race, ethnicity, and religion. It's changing, like he said, using his terminology, it is the composition of the country that is changing and changing too quickly. It is the absolute total change, but it's also the rate of change. This is the central issue of our time, that America and Europe was for thousands of years European, white. Whether it's the Germanic tribes, whether it's the Romans, the Greeks, this is a distinct civilization with a distinct race, a distinct culture, religion, all those things. And now it's going to be something else. It's a lot of Africans. It's a lot of Muslims. It's a lot of Arabs, Indians, Pakistanis. It will be something else. Something is lost. The civilization, the lineage, the race, which produced Homer and Cervantes and Shakespeare and Dante, is dying. It's being killed and replaced with the Igbo, with the Pashtun, with Bengalis. It's different. And the same is happening in America. If America is a satellite or an offshoot of Europe, the same thing is happening here. The continuity is being broken. Okay, that's number one. Number two, and this is related, is that sort of around the same time that America and Europe have been invaded by non-white people, there has also been another replacement, which is that our old elites, our old power structure, which was once a Catholic monarchy and then became Protestant monarchies and then became republics led by white people, now are being run by Jewish moneyed interests.
This is exactly why Tucker deflects to economics instead of demographics. The establishment needs mass immigration for cheap labor and voter replacement, so they redirect young people's anger toward generational wealth instead of the Great Replacement. Economic grievances are safe. They don't threaten the core agenda of demographic transformation.
And so at the time of the French Revolution, you had two democracies in the whole world, and the rest of Europe and the other white societies, it was kings and queens, all Christian. Well, then after World War I, you had all these republics, and it was all white people voting and having a citizenry and a parliament and a legislature and all these things. But after World War II, now it's all a Jewish moneyed system. It's all incomprehensibly complex. There's this syncretism. There's this syncing up of the productive capabilities, productive powers, money powers, military powers, and bureaucracy. It's now something else. And now we have a Jewish leadership, which is clearly accelerating a lot of these other changes. Social, cultural, political, demographic changes. We have a Jewish elite. That's why everything is pro-Israel. That's why they say the reason Germany exists is to apologize for the Holocaust. It's why in America you can't have a visa if you criticize Israel. It goes on and on like this. And so, like, these are the two issues. These are identity issues. My show is about the clash of civilizations, that the Western white world is being impacted by the non-white demographic replacement and the ascendance of Jewish civilization inside of America, the ascendance of Jewish nationalism. Zionism is a part of that, which now apparently steers America, and America steers the world empire. So, like, these are my issues. Tucker says, in response to the question, what do you think about Nick Fuentes and his impact on the future of the right? And what she means is my ideas. When she says white supremacy, racism, sexism, Christian nationalism, anti-Semitism, it's these issues. It's that whites are going to think of themselves as whites, Christians thinking of themselves as Christians, taking their own side, fighting for a future that resembles the past, fighting for our progeny so they resemble our ancestors, okay? Fighting for our sacred traditions, our holidays, fighting for a place where we feel like we belong, fighting for our home. And Tucker says, well, in response to your question about Nick Fuentes and how he's going to impact the right wing, he says, well, I think all those issues are not resonant, not salient. They don't matter. Race, ethnicity, religion, he says, even to an extent, immigration doesn't matter as much as economics. He says the main frustration among young people is not that the composition of the country the demographics are changing, but the main concern is the lack of economic opportunity for young people. Older people don't acknowledge that. I think most future conversations politically are about economics. And he's doing something else here too, because obviously my audience is a young audience. It's a generational phenomenon as well. I don't have much appeal among boomers. It's my fans are all extremely online, very engaged, bright, young people. And so that's the phenomenon. And Tucker says, why does Nick Fuentes and his ideas have cachet among young people? It's because of the lack of economic opportunity for them. And why are we blindsided by Nick Fuentes? Because the older people don't know about the economic problems the young people face. So what's he doing here? Well, he's effectively deflecting and dismissing everything. Here are the groypers and the young people saying, women need to shut the fuck up. Blacks need to be in prison. Jews are running the country. These are the problems. Here I am saying, look, the women don't shut up. Feminism is ruining everything. Immigration is ruining everything. Black people commit all the crime. Jews are running the show, and that's why it is the way it is. And Tucker is saying, oh, that? Oh, well, they're just mad because they don't have jobs. Yeah. And if you're old and you don't understand what they're saying, it's because you don't realize that they don't have jobs. And that's the real reason they're mad. That's the main issue. All that other stuff is just a way they're expressing it. It's just a phase. They're not really mad that they're becoming a minority. Yeah, we're not really mad about diversity and black crime and the rest of it. No, we're mad because we don't have jobs and we're just going through a phase, says Tucker. She comes back, the interviewer, she says, do you see that as Fuentes' power waning? Tucker responds, for sure. I don't know about Fuentes in particular, but he has been caricatured as a race guy. He was mad about the Jews or black people or whatever. But I'm just telling you, I think the future, the energy, not just on the right, but I think right and left agree on this under 30, is that young people have been shafted by older people, particularly by the baby boomers. And I hear young people talk not about, I'm mad about the Jews. I hear people say things like, only baby boomers would have a second home in Isle of Palms, South Carolina, but not help their kids buy homes. Really? That's what you're hearing? Wait a second. Wait. Time out. Back it up. Rewind the tape. Tucker seriously said, I'm reading this from a script. Tucker said, I hear young people talk not about, I'm mad at the Jews. So young people are not saying that at all. Tucker says, I hear those young people say things like, only baby boomers would have a second home in Isle of Palms, South Carolina, and not help their kids buy homes. Really? So if I go on Instagram today, if I go and create an Instagram account and I load up reels and I start liking right-wing content, I'm going to see a lot of Instagram reels about Isle of Palms, South Carolina, and I'm not going to see any content about Jews? You're telling me if I go on Twitter or TikTok or Instagram, or I go to a college campus and a young Republican meeting, if I talk to a young person, you go to your boomer relatives, talk to their nephews, grandchildren, and you say, what are you thinking about? They're not going to say Jews. They're going to say boomers with their real estate. Does anybody believe that? Does anybody even believe that you believe that? Do you believe that? Do people really believe you believe that? You don't even believe that. Are you kidding me? No, everybody is talking about the Jews. Everybody is talking about Israel. Everybody is talking about race. The right and the left, both. He says the right and the left are talking about housing. Yeah, sure. Maybe Ezra Klein is talking about housing. Everybody else is talking about Israel. Everybody else is talking about Gaza, Iran. Everybody else is talking about how odious Mark Levin and Laura Loomer are. They're talking about the ADL. They're talking about AIPAC. No, they're not all talking about baby boomers in Isle of Palms. I don't even know where that is. Okay? He goes on. So that's just insane. That's just totally out of touch and a lie. That's just a lie. Why are you lying? Why are you gaslighting us? When I hear young people, I don't hear them talk about Jews or Israel at all. Okay, so what, have you been in a coma for the past 3 years? Were you and Charlie Kirk in the astral realm? Were you with Clavicular when he got choked out and had a seizure? Were you in another dimension? Where have you been? That's all people have been talking about for the last 3 years. The young people are not talking about we're mad at the Jews. They're talking about baby boomers and real estate. Yeah, okay, maybe at American Moment, bro. Maybe at American Moment. Maybe at America First Policy Institute. Maybe at Bull Moose Club or whatever faggoty thing John Doyle put together this year. Everywhere else, it's the opposite.
Tucker's claim about young people ignoring Jewish power is laughably false. October 7th red-pilled an entire generation on Israel. TikTok is flooded with Palestine content, college campuses are in revolt, and AIPAC is trending constantly. He's either completely detached from reality or deliberately gaslighting his audience.
Anyway, he goes on. He says, the future that I imagine is not a future in which we're yelling at each other about race. It's a future in which people are legitimately revolutionary, maybe even violent on the basis of thwarted economic opportunity. I think the real issues are not about Fuentes or even about race. Immigration has a direct effect on economics. And so the overwhelming majority of newly created jobs in the past 5 years have gone to the foreign-born. That's not an attack on the foreign-born, naturally. To say that's not really the job of the U.S. government to provide economic opportunity to the world. So Tucker is telling us it's not about the Jews, it's not about immigration or race, it's about economics. It's about the lack of jobs. No one's talking about Jews, everyone's talking about real estate. And in the future, no one's going to talk about race, everyone's going to be talking about economic opportunity. Really? And you know what this sounds like to me? This sounds like J.D. Vance's mentor, David Frum, who wrote an article in The Atlantic and said that J.D. Vance was being groomed in the early 2010s to steer the GOP away from xenophobia and racism and white identity and into talking about the white working class and how they were screwed over and don't have economic opportunity and they need to stop blaming immigrants and they need to just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. In other words, it sounds like hillbilly elegy. What Tucker just said, don't blame immigrants for the lack of economic opportunity, don't lean into race and identity, don't lean into culture war, that sounds like the thesis of hillbilly elegy, which J.D. Vance was basically given a sinecure at Peter Thiel's venture capital firm so that he could go and promote that to the elites on CNN and at the Aspen Institute and his fellowship at American Enterprise Institute. It sounds like David Frum's idea of J.D. Vance's political trajectory, where Frum said that Vance would deliver the GOP from the nativist base impulses of the Republican electorate and deliver them towards something more productive, something where we talk about the climate and America has a policeman's role in the world and all these other kinds of things. It sounds exactly like that. It's also just not even true. None of that is true. You're telling me that the only thing that is going on is there's a lack of economic opportunity and we happen to blame the immigrants? That's not what is happening at all. Dallas is ground zero for the Indian invasion of America. It's all H-1Bs, it's all these Indians, and anyone who lives there will tell you it is ruining their quality of life. Anyone will tell you all these new developments, all the new construction, it's all being bought up by rich Indians, and they fucking ruin everything. And the people in LA and Houston will tell you the same thing about Hispanics. When you go to Houston, why is it dangerous now? Venezuelan gangs, immigrants. LA is majority minority. It's like 80% non-white, and it's a dump. Okay? You go to Chicago, you go to New York. Is the problem a lack of economic opportunity? Or is that black people have made public transportation and Grant Park and Millennium Park uninhabitable? They're no-go zones. McDonald's doesn't want to be in Fulton Market anymore. They don't want to be in West Loop anymore because they can't get their vice presidents to move here because nobody wants to be in Chicago because it's too dangerous because of the black people. And they're not even immigrants. They don't even have anything to do with the job market. So, no, that's not true. The changing composition of the country is everything. And here's how you know that's the case. I think absolutely anybody, especially anybody that watches my show, would prefer that we undergo another Great Recession or Great Depression if we could be in a white country. Everybody, anybody that watches my show would certainly prefer that we undergo a Great Depression or a Great Recession if it meant that we could have some semblance of a white country again. Everybody knows that's true. So no, it's not about economic opportunity. We would all prefer to have a smaller house and maybe a smaller TV and a smaller backyard and a smaller car. And maybe we eat out less than we did before. And by that, I mean restaurants. And I don't mean box like Tucker, another favorite of Tucker's. Disgusting, mind out of the gutter. We would all prefer to have less if it meant we could have more white neighbors. We would all prefer to have less stuff if we could have more society, more coherence, more of a social fabric. And that comes from familiarity. That's where the word family comes from. It's familial, it's familiar. We look like each other. We talk like each other. We like each other. So none of that is... First of all, this bears a striking resemblance to all the rhetoric that has come out of the Teal verse, where they're talking about a colorblind meritocracy. Yeah, fuck that. Remember when they were pushing a colorblind meritocracy? We're going to have like a non-racist capitalist country. Yeah, Indians welcome. Indians and Vietnamese and Malays welcome. Mexicans welcome. As long as we have a colorblind meritocracy. Remember they called it multiracial working class populism? Yeah, workers of the world unite, black, brown, white. If you're sick of the Democrats' tax and spend agenda, Steve Bannon and us and Trump are gonna cut the capital gains or increase the capital gains tax to pay for more welfare or something like that. It sounds like all this garbage that has come out of Joe Kent, J.D. Vance, the Teal verse, all these people, Tucker Carlson's show on Fox for years. And this is what they consistently do. They downplay race, they downplay religion, they downplay all of that, and they say it's all just about economics. Everything else is a distraction. That's not real. That's the SPLC. That's the feds. You're a Fed if you talk about race. You're a left-wing plant if you talk about race. No one really wants that. That's not even real. What did he say about replacement migration? He said it's a voting rights issue. Why is it a problem that America will be minority white? Because it's voting. It's all about voting. All these immigrants are going to be able to vote, and like they don't care about America as much as heritage America. You know, they're always trying to like workshop some convoluted way where we're against immigration, but not because it's about race. It's about everything else, economics, voting. It's about the legality of it, some other thing. Here's where it gets good, though. So then they talk about J.D. Vance, and you're going to see how these things come together. So then it gets a little bit weird. Interviewer starts asking Tucker about J.D. Vance, and just so you know, Tucker and J.D. Vance are in bed together, okay, and they have been. Tucker Carlson has known Peter Thiel for 35 years. Tucker says that he never, this is inside information, Tucker says that he never makes a big life decision without first talking to Peter Thiel. I've heard that firsthand. He never makes a big life decision without calling Peter Thiel. He says that Peter Thiel's really misunderstood. He's actually one of the most brilliant people around. He's known Peter Thiel since 1992. Tucker and Thiel are like this. So are Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance. As you know, Peter Thiel got J.D. Vance's first job in Silicon Valley. Then Thiel got Vance's first job in venture capital. Then Thiel hired Vance at his venture capital firm. Then Thiel funded J.D. Vance's venture capital firm. Then Peter Thiel gave J.D. Vance $15 million to run for Senate, and Thiel got Trump to endorse him, even though J.D. Vance was an ever-Trumper. So Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance are like this, and Tucker and Peter Thiel are like this. And when J.D. Vance was running for Senate in Ohio, Tucker had him on his show 45 times to promote him. J.D. Vance founded a venture capital firm called 1789 Capital, an offshoot of that. He founded Rockbridge Network, an offshoot of Rockbridge called 1789 Capital, gave Tucker Carlson $10-15 million in seed money to found the Tucker Carlson Network. Tucker Carlson's son Buckley works in J.D. Vance's press office. Okay, so these people are all deeply connected with each other, and there's something going on there, just so you understand. So this New York Times intrepid reporter, she asked Vance about some of this, and it gets very bizarre very quickly. See if you can understand why. So the interviewer says, "Are you still close to Vance considering your rupture with the president?" Tucker says, "I will always love J.D. Vance as a man. I think, and I'm making this judgment on the basis of his public statements over many years, I think he's in a tough spot. He's on the record repeatedly saying this is exactly the thing this administration would avoid doing, and now they've done it." The interviewer says, "When was the last time you spoke to the vice president?" Tucker says, "Oh, I don't know. But I wouldn't want to add to his problems at all. I would just say what's obvious, which is that I'm hardly an advisor to this administration. And I think it's also clear that Donald Trump makes these decisions." It's like a weird political answer. When's the last time he talked to Vance? I don't know. I don't want to hurt him. I'm not an advisor at all. Trump is in control. She presses him. "You really don't know the last time you spoke to Vice President J.D. Vance? Weeks, months, days?" Tucker says, "I don't know. I mean, I would never characterize that." Why not? "I don't want to cause him more problems. I would just say I'm not advising. No one's seeking my counsel. I'm not trying to influence anything. I gave it my best shot. Didn't work." "When's the last time you talked to him?" "I don't know, but I'm not an advisor." "Really? You don't know? Days, weeks, months?" "I have no idea. I would never count that. I'm just not an advisor. I'm not counsel. I'm not influencing anything." Okay. Interviewer comes back. "However, he has felt publicly, Vance has been a loyal soldier, even going so far as to head the recent negotiations with the Iranians. And we've seen, and you've commented how unpopular the war is among the American people. Do you think the role that he is playing now will hurt his political prospects?" Tucker: "There are people in the White House who want to hurt J.D. Vance and have wanted that since the very first day. They are bitter. They wanted Marco Rubio to be the choice as vice president. And so J.D. has been subject to, this is well known, but I'll confirm it, nonstop treachery from people on the neocon side." "Who are these people?" says the interviewer. Tucker says, "People around Marco Rubio. Certainly he's the choice of the donor class. The donor class is avowedly neoconservative. That's why they give money for outcomes like the ones we're watching, and they have been totally against Vance from the very beginning and have been working to undermine him." "Who do you mean specifically?" she says, because it was interesting in those conversations with Susie Wiles, for example, where she was very much praising Rubio and had less complimentary things to say about Vance. "Is that to whom you're referring?" Tucker replies, "I don't know," is the real answer. "I don't know." "You're accusing people of treachery, so I'm wondering." Tucker replies, "Well, I know there's been a lot of treachery for sure, and I know they were mad about JD getting that job." "Who is they?" she says. "Well, Miriam Adelson, for example, Rupert Murdoch. They were very much vested in using Trump for what we're seeing now." "But within the White House," she asks. He says, "I don't know the answer to that. I've never worked there. So if you don't work there, you can't say what you think you know, but it's really hard to know." Okay. So we don't know when you talked to Vance last. You wouldn't even characterize that. You don't know who's out to get him, but you're sure everybody's out to get him. You're not going to name him. Finally, she asks, "It was just published that your son Buckley, who worked for the VP, left his job. Did your rift with Trump have anything to do with that and make it hard for him to stay with the administration?" Tucker replies, no, zero. He was not forced out of the role at all. Let me just say, in a normal world, in a decent world, my son or my son's job would have no relevance at all to me. Really? Why wouldn't it? You are an advisor to J.D. Vance. You're an advisor to Trump. Trump is at war with Iran. That's spoiling Vance's prospects. You support Vance's prospects for president. Your son works for Vance. In a decent world, no one would fucking talk about that? Are you insane? If I had a son and my son were working for Trump, no one would talk about that? I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. It doesn't even make any sense. It doesn't even make any sense. Interviewer comes back. Why did your son leave then if he wasn't forced out? Tucker says, I don't know. I don't know. You can ask him. He was there for over a year. The White House is an intense place to work. I don't want to talk about my son. He's got nothing to do with this, but that's kind of the point. We need to defend the core beliefs of our civilization, which, by the way, are attractive to the entire world. People move here not just for our robust economy, but because they want to be judged on the basis of what they did, not what their parents did. That's the whole point. That's collective punishment. It's blood guilt, and we reject it. I gave this lecture to Nick Fuentes. I gave this lecture to Mike Huckabee. The lecture never changes because the idea is the core idea of our civilization. The core idea of our civilization is that we can't ask why your son was fired from J.D. Vance's office. That's the core of our civilization. That's blood guilt. That's the essence of soteriology. That's the essence of our religion. Are you kidding me? Now, that's a little bit too crazy even for me. That's a little bit too insulting. When's the last time you talked to Vance? I don't know. Really? I couldn't even guess. I don't even keep track. Everybody's out to get Vance. Really? Like who? I don't know. I don't work there. Why did your son get fired? I don't know. Ask him. You shouldn't ask me about that. That's the core of our civil. People want to move to America because we're judged on what we did, on our meritocracy, not our parents, not blood guilt. Okay, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know what that has to do with anything. I thought the blood guilt speech was about Gaza, which is the idea that Israel shouldn't kill children because their parents voted for Hamas or something. I thought that is what that was about. But then it became about something else. Then when people started to criticize Israel and say, hey, wait a second, I think there's something going on with Jews, then Tucker brought that out again and said, that's also blood guilt. Because if you believe that Jewishness has something to do with Israel, then you're blaming all Jews for the actions of some Jews, and that's a form of blood guilt. And that's wrong too. You following this? Now, if you say to Tucker Carlson, hey, so about your son working for the vice president, what's going on there? Oh, now that's blood guilt too. So it started with Israel killing children in Gaza is wrong because they don't inherit the sins of their parents that voted for Hamas. Then it became, we can't talk about the Jewish dimension to our Israel problem because to say that it has something to do with the Jewish religion or Jewish ethnicity would be anti-Semitism. And that's a form of blood guilt. Now, if you say Tucker's son works for Vance, Tucker got him that job, it tethers Tucker to Vance because of Tucker's friendship with Vance. Now that's blood. Now we can't ask about that. Hey, what's the deal with your son working for Vance? Blood guilt, blood guilt. Our civilization is founded on the idea that my son can work for whatever vice president he wants and no one can ask me about it. This civilization is founded on the idea that any millionaire CIA agent's son can work for any vice president and the New York Times cannot ask about it. That's not decent. Really? Fuck you. Let's just drop the act. Let's cut the shit, okay? Your daddy ran Voice of America. Your daddy, Silver Spoon Boy, okay? Your daddy ran Voice of America for the CIA. He ran U.S. propaganda for the CIA. He was a Reagan appointee. You live down the street from the officer that overthrew Mossadegh. in the CIA, in Iran in the 50s, okay? You have worked your entire career for Rupert Murdoch. For Rupert Murdoch, the same person you're saying is out to get J.D. Vance. Your whole career, you've been in bed with Peter Thiel, who's apparently been advising you. He's a CIA contractor with Palantir since 9/11. And your son works for J.D. Vance, who is a Manchurian candidate for Peter Thiel, the CIA contractor. And if anybody talks about this, we're going to get a speech about blood guilt. We're going to get a speech about how we should all just be nice to everybody. Don't talk about my daddy who was in the CIA. Don't talk about it. That's attacking my family. And don't talk about my son who works for J.D. Vance. That's blood guilt. It's getting a little stale. You know, it's getting a little old, and it's pressing. You're pushing the bounds of credulity on that one. I don't believe you. Nobody believes you. None of that makes any sense. You don't know when the last time you talked to the vice president was. You don't know who's out to get him. You don't know why your son was fired from his office. I don't believe you. You're lying. You got him that job. It's a sinecure. You're the most famous influencer conservative in America. Your son worked for Jim Banks, who's a fucking spook, and now he works for J.D. Vance. And you want us to believe that you had nothing to do with it? And you still don't? And you don't even know what's going on. Okay. You know what he told me at the dinner? At the dinner, I asked him about that. You know what he told me? He said, my son can work anywhere he wants. I had nothing to do with that. He said, my son is your age. He's a young man. He wanted to work in politics, so we got that job. I had nothing to do with that. I don't. Really? Really? Anybody? Yeah. Now, that's just insulting, because here's the difference. You want to talk about the lack of economic opportunity for young people? I know a long, long, long line of young white men that are better looking than your son, smarter than your son, more qualified than your son, went to better schools than your son, and they can't get an interview. You want to know why? Because their dad isn't Tucker Carlson. They can't get an interview, let alone they're going to be in Jim Banks' office and every intern is going to be jacking them off because it's Buckley Carlson. And they certainly don't get to work in the vice president's office with J.D. Vance. And then you want to deign to tell us about the revolutionary violence because of how the elites don't understand the economic plight of young men, while you simultaneously tell us immigration's not real.
This perfectly illustrates how the system actually works. While Tucker lectures about economic opportunity, his mediocre son gets handed elite positions through daddy's connections. Meanwhile, talented young America First patriots get blacklisted. It's not merit, it's nepotism protecting establishment bloodlines in their intelligence network.
Race isn't real. Jews aren't real. No one's talking about Jews. It's about the baby boomers. Really, what about your 2 houses? What about your $10 million real estate portfolio? You in a crap? We can't ask about that either. Is that also blood guilt? Some student asked him at Turning Point USA last year, they said, I read you have a $50 million net worth. Tucker says, fuck you, don't believe everything you read on the internet. Is that blood guilt? We also can't talk about your net worth either? Mr. Populist, we can't talk about your CIA dad's son. We can't talk about we can't talk about your CIA dad. We can't talk about your Nepo baby son. We can't talk about your $50 million net worth. We can't talk about why you never criticized Israel until 2 years ago. What can we talk about, Tucker? What can and should we talk about? Demon attacks, UFOs, astral projection, time travel? For fuck's sake already. Does nobody see through this? Does nobody else see through the ruse? Are you kidding me? That's just insulting. What happened to your son working for the vice president who is caught in the middle between you and Trump in this war that you obviously hate, and Trump is attacking you? How dare you ask me about my son? In a decent world, if we remembered what our civilization was based on, you wouldn't even think to ask me that. Oh, stop. Just stop with that already, with that routine. I'm sick of it. Do the laugh again. Do the laugh again. Now, here's where it really gets good. So this is the last part. We're going to bring it all together here. So then he talks a little bit more about me, and specifically about me and J.D. Vance. So the interviewer asks him what he thinks about my comments. I, of course, said that J.D. Vance shouldn't be the president because he married an Indian. Now, it's a little more complicated than that, but whatever. Who cares? It's also just true. Yeah, I agree. I don't think we should have an Indian first lady. I think that's insane, to be honest with you. I don't want to see that in the White House, and maybe that's good enough. Obviously, there's more to it, but whatever, fine. So she says, what do you think about Fuentes saying that Vance shouldn't be president because he's married to an Indian? This was some of Tucker's response. He says, quote, race is thrown up as a distraction so often, as in this case, to distract from what actually matters. Fuentes himself is a distraction from the conversations that matter because power is displayed through the structure of the economic system globally and per country and in the use of force. And so Washington's response, Wall Street's response, is to be like, let's have a race war. And you guys can argue over blacks and whites, or that JD is married to an Indian woman. So Fuentes is incredibly useful for people with actual power to divert the conversation to something that is irrelevant and divisive because it's a divide and conquer strategy. This economic system is hurting young people. And so Fuentes shows up, and everyone wants to talk about Fuentes because it's really safe. No one wants to talk about why are the capital gains taxes, half those of tax on regular income. You will never have that debate. Have you ever asked a question about that? No, no one ever asked that, and I think nothing's more important domestically than that. That's my opinion. Really? No one ever talked about taxes? Really? No one ever talked about the rich paying their fair share? No one ever talked about a wealth tax? No one ever talked about a VAT tax? No one ever talked about eating the rich? Raising taxes on the rich, Eisenhower's 90% marginal. Really, no one ever talked about that. No one ever talked about wealth inequality. No one ever talked about income inequality. No one ever talked about the carried interest provision. Nobody ever. Are you kidding me? No one ever talked about millionaires and billionaires until Tucker came along. And the real problem is that I'm distracting from that by talking about Jewish oligarchy and white genocide. That's the easy conversation that everybody wants to have. Everybody wants to talk about our Jewish oligarchy. Everybody wants to talk about white genocide. Everybody wants to have this very comfortable conversation about how whites are being outnumbered by non-whites everywhere and all the problems that come from that. Everybody wants to talk about the conspicuously Jewish nature of our entire system and their perverse system that they've created to influence our country. Those are the easy distractions that everyone wants to shine a light on. The stuff that nobody wants to talk about, the hard, difficult conversations, are why the rich will not pay their fair share. Why will the millionaires and billionaires not pay more in tax? Are you aware that Amazon paid no taxes 1 year? And how about all these poor workers? Will someone please think of cutting the taxes on the workers? That's Tucker's opinion. Bang! And that's his opinion. Boom! Bang! Period. And take that to the bank. Whoa, whoa, oh man, oh, the studio is shaking. Goodness. Wow, you just rocked my world. He goes on. He says, I wish I hadn't done the Fuentes interview. Well, you know, that's a really hurtful thing to say. Now, what are you, just trying to hurt my feelings? You know, if you told me I'm a distraction, I'm a useful idiot for the elites so that they won't have to talk about Occupy Wall Street, you want to say I'm the race guy caricatured for talking about blacks and Jews, you know, that's fine. But when you say you wish you never interviewed me, now I feel like you're just trying to hurt my feelings. Now I feel like you're just trying to antagonize me. I wish I never did the interview. Ouch. Okay. Well, he goes on. He says it was totally not worth it. It was kind of interesting, I guess, but I added to the distraction. What I really wanted to talk about was where we were going in this war with Iran. And I spent like a month getting calls from people being like, you're a Nazi. And I wish I hadn't done that. It didn't imperil my soul. I've interviewed far worse people like Mike Huckabee. Far worse person than Nick Fuentes hurt many more people than Nick Fuentes. Same with Ted Cruz. So I don't think it affected me. I interview people I disagree with all the time, and often I'm polite to them, including war criminals. So this is your Tucker interview. And this paints a picture for you of what is happening in the American right. Okay, you're clearly seeing the contours here, which is that Tucker is in the pocket with J.D. Vance. They are in somebody's pocket. They are a part of a clique. They are a part of something. Tucker says, I love J.D. Vance. He's a good man. I just don't want to hurt him. I don't even remember the last time we talked. Dude, his son worked for him. Clearly, they're in bed together. And Tucker hates me. Tucker says, I'm not that popular. I have no power. Everything I say is a distraction. It's misdirected energy. Race and religion don't matter. I have no real impact on the conversation. It's all about economics. He says I'm a Fed. All these other disparaging things about me. Simultaneously propping up Vance, simultaneously dismissing me. But you map onto that also this ideological divide where Tucker says the real issue is the economic system. Those are the real issues. And they're only expressed or misdirected towards race, religion. What's really happening in the real future and the real wave is the discontent over the lack of economic opportunity. Suffice to say, Vance is the remedy. Vance is going to give us our colorblind meritocracy where the young people can buy houses and get jobs, and that the other stuff doesn't matter. And obviously, the inverse of this is that I am the problem. I am hurting Vance. I'm not a fan of Vance. I'm taking support from Vance, and I'm taking support from Vance in the service of something that is either the agenda of the elites, and this is meant to distract from the fact that the masses don't support their economic and national security agenda, or I'm just a misguided young person who just has it wrong, and what I really am about is that the housing market is unaffordable and there's no jobs, and I just have the wrong idea. I'm leading everybody astray. And you could see very clearly that this is where they want to take it. They want Vance to be in the White House, and they don't want to do anything about immigration. They don't want to do anything about Israel. They don't want to do anything about any of these things. Do you think when J.D. Vance gets elected that they're going to address H-1Bs? Why would they? All the tech people that support Vance need H-1Bs. Never going to happen. You think when Vance gets elected, they're going to build the border wall? They're not building it now. You think he's going to keep us out of Iran? They can't keep us out of Iran right now. Tucker says the neocons don't want Vance to be the president. Really? The same neocons that were 100% behind his ticket with Trump? The neocons that he spoke to at the Quincy Institute when he put a pro-Israel spin on America First? It's just ridiculous. His chief of staff, Jacob Reeses, who is a Jewish Zionist? What are you talking about? This is where they're trying to take it. And people like Tucker and Thiel and Vance and Musk and all these people that are part of this thing, whatever it is, they see me as a massive inconvenience. I am a massive thorn in their side because I'm the only one that is telling the truth about this stuff. I'm out here doing this dumbass show telling people, yeah, it's about the Jews. It is a Jewish problem. It is a Jewish oligarchy. It's not the secular government of Israel's policies under Netanyahu. No, we have a Jewish oligarchy. And yes, it is about race. It's not a lack of economic opportunity. We're a minority in our own country, and it's miserable. You understand. If you have kids in a public school, if you live in a working or middle class neighborhood, if you live in and around a major metro area, if you have a job anywhere, if you ever have to deal with customer service, if you've ever driven on an interstate, on a highway, you know, yes, the problem is an identity problem. It's a demographic problem. No, it's not just the jobs. The job market happens to be bad. But that is not our antipathy towards immigration and demographic change is not a transmutation of that problem. That's a byproduct of it. That's just a negative externality of the real problem, which is the immigration. And so I think that Tucker brought me on. I don't even know why, but it seems like it was to neutralize me. Tucker and Vance are in league. It's very clear last year that I was gathering steam and I was becoming more popular, and I might be a problem for Vance in 28, and I might even be a problem for Tucker. And so I'm sure they brought me in to try to neutralize me so that I would not be an adversary. And when it became clear that I didn't stand down, when it became clear that I stuck to my guns, then they threw me right back under the bus. And it turned into, oh, actually, it was an intervention. It wasn't an interview, it was an intervention. And Tucker now says I brought him on the show so that he could run his mouth and expose himself. And I brought him on the show to confront him over his anti-Semitism. And I gave him the speech about blood guilt, and he just won't listen. And so he's still a problem. And that's very clearly what is going on here. And I would just say about all of it, I'm not in this so that we can elect a CIA agent. I don't trust Vance. I don't trust Tucker. These people are liars. Tucker is a liar. Vance is a liar. Nobody even knows what they actually believe. Tucker says in the same interview, he said, I never criticized Israel in my entire career until 2 years ago. We don't even know who you are. We have no idea who you really are, what you really believe, who you really work for. I don't even know what the fuck you are. I don't know who Vance is. Who is J.D. Vance? 10 years ago, he voted for Evan McMullin, a CIA agent. 15 years ago, he was mentored by David Frum, a neocon speechwriter for George W. Bush. 10 years ago, he wrote an article dedicated to Barack Obama about how smart he was, and white people hate him because they're jealous that he's smarter than they are. He wrote a book called Hillbilly Elegy about how he married an Indian immigrant as a fuck you to his loser family that couldn't get out of their own way. Hillbilly Elegy is about how white people are blaming everybody else for their problems. They need to get to work and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Stop blaming international trade and mass migration. Now J.D. Vance is going to be the standard bearer of America First. Now he's going to be the leader of the movement, and the Groypers are going to fall in line behind him. Tucker's dad ran Voice of America for the CIA. Tucker, in his gap years in Nicaragua, fighting with the Contras after the Iran-Contras affair. We're not supposed to talk about that. That's attacking his family. You want to talk about elites being out of touch, youth unemployment? You tell us you don't know why your Nepo baby son works for Vance? I mean, are you kidding me? We don't even know who these people are. They are liars. They insult our intelligence daily. And it works because most people are pretty dumb. But I don't trust them. I don't trust Tucker. I don't trust Vance. I don't trust Peter Thiel. These people are weird. These people are not like me. I am from Chicago. Who's this kid from Chicago? Yeah, I'm from Chicago. Okay, my grandparents were on Taylor Street. My dad grew up on the West Side. My mom grew up in Melrose Park. I'm a real American. I don't know who you are. I didn't take a gap year in Nicaragua with the Contras. I didn't accompany my dad to fucking Pakistan. Okay? I didn't work for the Weekly Standard. I didn't work for Fox News for 20 years before I woke up and realized there's something going on with Israel one day. I don't have any contracts with the CIA. I'm not obsessed with the Antichrist like these other people. Okay? I don't know what any of that is about. These people are not like me. These people are not like me. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they're about. And by the way, I never got a contract. I never got a jersey. These people want me and the Groypers to be on the team. Why won't all of you just join up with Vance? Don't you realize blah, blah, blah? Hey, listen, pal. I'm not being paid. I never signed a contract. I'm not wearing a fucking jersey. You want to let me in on the master plan? I got people all the time telling me, Vance is actually great. You just got to give him a chance. Well, you know what? If there's some master plan, nobody told me. I didn't get invited to Skull Island and get the blueprint. I didn't get the schematics on how Vance is going to deliver everybody. I didn't get let in on this story. So they're always telling me, Vance is our guy. You just got to trust it. You got to get behind him. You're really becoming a problem for us. Well, I'm not wearing a jersey, and none of these people are ever nice to me, and they never help me, and I'm not a part of that. So why do you think I'm on the team? What do I owe you now? So anyway, it's getting really, really weird. And I will tell you this much. I trust me. I trust you. I only trust people younger than me because they're not feds. And I will say this. Fuck everybody in this administration. Trump, Vance, Rubio, Hegseth. I don't want one of them. Fuck anybody that worked for Fox News ever. Oh, well, he hasn't worked for Fox News in 3 years. Fuck him. You worked for Rupert Murdoch for 10 years. Rupert Murdoch was paying you $20 million a year for 10 years. Fuck you. I don't trust you. Get out of my head. Oh, you're against Israel now? Oh, great. Just when we needed it. Only after everybody on earth was red-pilled. Only after everybody and literally their grandfather was red-pilled by Instagram Reels. Oh, now Tucker's against Israel. Thanks a lot. Only after we all got red-pilled. So I don't trust you. And here's my message. It's the same message as before. 2026, vote down. I'm a Democrat now. I'm a moderate Democrat in 2026. I don't know about 28. For 2026, I am a non-woke Democrat. Hi, my name's Nick Fuentes. I'm an Afro-Latino, non-woke Democrat. I care about affordability. I care about foreign interventions. I care about the border. I'm a non-woke moderate Democrat. I think the GOP needs to be destroyed. I think the corrupt criminal government of Trump needs to be slowed down. We need to impeach the orange. It's time to put this nigga in a peach. Trump needs to be placed inside of a crystal. He needs to be impeached. This fat orange, tiny hands needs to be impeached. And then in 28, no Vance, no Rubio. We have to burn down the whole party. We need to elect a dark horse who's going to put America first. I'm not listening to anybody else. No Vance, no Rubio, America first. And that is all that matters anymore. That is the only thing that matters. I'm not voting for a Democrat unless it's like me, unless it's a Nick Fuentes Democrat. Unless a Nick Fuentes Democrat wins the nomination, I won't vote for a Democrat. I'm never Vance. I'm never Rubio. I'm an America First guy. So Tucker and all the rest of them, they're going to try to shut me down. They're going to try to get Vance in there in 28. And you got to wisen up and realize we got to take our own side here. None of this